Watercolor students. I'm gonna try a portrait exercise now, or painting exercise now. We're gonna be layering the three primaries, similar to how you would have an offset printing process where there's a yellow layer, then there's a magenta layer, then a cyan blue layer, finally a black layer. This is cadmium yellow medium. This is phthalo crimson, kind of a more of a red violet. This is cobalt blue, and this is Payne's gray. So, it's kind of equivalent to black. The advantage of working on this method, it allows you to kind of build up to the darker values, but also it trains you to be comfortable with layering color. And I would really like people to get comfortable with layering color. And then while you're doing this, while you're working on this, you'll be doing what is known as glazing, kind of continuing to layer transparent glazes over underpainting until you're able to build up, the colors, the tones that you need. So I'm going to try to do that relatively quickly. I'm going to start with a yellow layer, and right off camera here, or you can see a little bit, is an image of a red-winged blackbird, which I thought would be good because it's got kind of black iridescent feathers. And so having all of those spectrum colors there will make the feathers look more iridescent. That's the idea. And it will make a richer black too by the time you get there. So you can do a sketch, or you can do a sketch and paint, whatever's comfortable. And this, when I use this yellow here, it's really gonna, disappear. It will influence color when I layer the color over it, but it's really not gonna make a big deal. So I'm just sketching in with my brush. And I can correct later on because since I'm only in yellow, I can really change things. Like, for instance, I can change the scale on the bird because it's too small. Body's too small. I'm making it bigger as I go. And extending the head a little bit too. Okay. Trying to get the shape just right, or at least within the realm of what's going to be representative. All right. So mostly the yellow is just used to generate a shape, and there's just a lot of underlying yellow color. because it's a red-winged blackbird and it's got yellow in the wing, which is this area here. Okay, so now I can use red to, now it's kind of my yellow layer. So now I'm going to use red to define it a little bit more. I'm going to use red for some of the outline. Kind of trying to make the contours a little bit soft and feathery. And now I'm outlining the wing a little bit. And there's just one, one area like right around here that's going to remain truly yellow, which is right there. Then just breaking down more red on my brush. Kind of using the yellow underpainting to kind of float the red paint into, which in my mind would be a little more soft and feathery, kind of in character with the feathers. And it's also creating kind of an outline that I think I can use to my advantage. Let's see here. The eye. Oops. Here's the beak over here, so the eyes somewhere over here. Let's do a little outline for now. And there's interesting kind of little scaly feathers on the back. And then these wing feathers. There. There, so with red and yellow so far, I've got kind of a basic underpainting. Going to continue to define this red wing a little bit more with more red. So I'm kind of trying to build up saturation in the red color. And also I'm just looking for areas where, areas where it's dark and light. And when I can also go back to, say, for instance, yellow, I can go back to the yellow, still fill in. This is a pretty dense area over here. So I'm just yellowing more, layering more yellow into it. There, okay. So now I can wait for this to dry. And it will dry out eventually. But in the kind of in the spirit of making kind of like a quicker sketch, I'm just going to keep going with the blue. Now the blue should start creating significant changes once I put it in there. And that's when the iridescent aspect of it will start to materialize. And I'm still just doing kind of general washes. I'm not doing a lot of texture. This will change a lot as it dries. And I'm hoping that if I just kind of follow through with process, a lot of my choices will be made for me. You know, it'll look okay just by virtue of my doing creating this process. Up here, the paint's mostly dried. And I kind of like what I kind of like about it, this method, is I just love to see the kind of the underlying color. So it's nice when you can still see what's underneath a little bit, that kind of building. So bits of orange and red, and you know that I'm layering the blue over. I think that this is to one's advantage just to kind of leave some of that. I used to enjoy it when the newspaper was still printed and you would get the funny papers along with the newspaper. And sometimes the funny papers would be printed slightly off register. So you'd see like a kind of, you know, the magenta overlapping the yellow and the blue overlapping those two and finding the black. And it looked really cool when it's not quite in register. And so this is sort of the effect that we're getting here. So just following through. Now this is, you know, a strong shape. So presumably if I just get the shape down, then I don't need a lot of internal details. I'm doing some little outliney things with the blue. So this, what this does, it basically exaggerates the colors that are there. It's not going to be completely true to whatever the original was. It's going to be it's going to be kind of a hyper version of that. It'll just be more super exaggerated. So be comfortable with that. It's the eye. And then the beak. Trying to get in a position where I can paint the detail of the beak without getting my arm or my head in the way. Not being totally successful at that. This all is very dark. So I'm just going to make it dark. And some of the underpainting visible. There, and now to bring out the wing on the blackbird. Some more feathers down here. Sometimes, you know, in certain areas, you're obviously not happy with them, but it's important just to be patient. Like this area is driving me nuts over here right now, but I just have to be patient. It's got to dry, and then I can manipulate it. But if I go in there too soon and try to fix it or resolve it, then it's just gonna be worse. So I just have to be comfortable with letting it go, and then eventually I can get back and change. Yeah, man, I have plenty more blue I can still do. All right. And more feathers. Now this is all just so wet that I can't really do much to it at the moment. But I'm gonna just save it for later. And I can come back and do more red. And then I'm going to try to leave this blue. When the blue mixes with the red and the yellow, it just kind of becomes more neutral gray. But I'm going to use that one last layer with the Payne's gray to see if I can finally you know, bring it home. And then while I'm waiting over here, I can start another area. Just this a little cattail that the bird is perched on. Has a sort of irregular edge. And I'm going to treat it basically the same way that treated the bird, by just creating this yellow base, and then I'll come back in with other color. It's mostly kind of a brownish tone, so I might not use as much blue. Certainly a lot of red though. And then maybe some of the Payne's gray right at the end. There, so there's the cattail. Now going to the red. It's pretty wet, so the paint's really flowing, the red paint's really flowing into the fluid, into the wet surface there. And then I feel like I got too much color in, so what you can do is drop in water, kind of lift out. I'm going to lift this out with a rag in a minute, as soon as I dissolve the surface a little bit more. And then that looks a little bit better. So that's softer. Once I finish blotting, I'll probably come back and put more water in there. Yeah. This method too is something that you could, you don't have to, you wouldn't have to use it religiously. Like if you got to the point where you layered all these colors and you still wanted to add something different that wasn't specifically a primary, then you could do it. But when you, this just exaggerates the color and gets you to maybe consider things that you wouldn't ordinarily. There, that's looking kind of cattailish for the moment. And then this, still very wet. There are some highlights on the feathers. And so I can do the same thing, once the paint's kind of dry, like I could highlight here. by just lifting. And highlight here. Like that. This edge isn't very defined, or it got some kind of blue in it, so I want to keep that edge pretty defined because that's where the red part of the wing is. There, so I'm just kind of removing some of that paint. And then along the back, there's kind of an iridescent shimmer. So I'm just going to remove a little color there. And then I can always go over that again too. There. On the beak even, there's a kind of a highlight. So I'm going to lift out a little paint. Little highlight. So kind of wet to do a whole lot else there. And then this area here has got to dry. It's getting there. So I want this to be relatively dry when I do that darker layer. But I can start a little bit, I guess. All right, so finally, we're at the Payne's gray layer. And so I'm going to come back, first start with the shadows that I see. Lots of dark around this area. Just a little bits of blue visible there for the iridescence of the feathers. Going to save the eye till later. And then I'm keeping a little bit of light there on the top of the head, so there's a kind of shimmer of a little shimmer of sunlight up there. Just trying to keep just a little bit of a highlight on the back. And then finally, in here, this has got to be red eventually. I'll make it red. And then I'm going to get some dark down here. And then finally, need to get some color in the feathers here, or some dark in the feathers. You need to make that area dark. Fix that later. Trying to leave a few little highlights where where there might be a little glint on the feathers. All right, now I'm extending this a little bit so it picks up on this line. Maybe I'll make it blue. Okay. Now, this really does have to dry, and then I would come back in with a few final sort of edges or layers or accents in the dark. I'm doing a blue glaze over this tail feather. And then I want to do the elaborate on the wing. Come in with the red. I'm going to break form a little bit and add yellow into the red. Red's too dark. I want it to be more glowy. So the yellow underneath the red would make it glow. But if I take away some red and add some yellow, that should get it more, should make that red more glowy. Yeah. Kind of mopping up excess color. I got too much color in there. All right, I'm just gonna have to wait there. Now, one thing I can do now, if I want this cattail to look kind of more brownish tan, pretty much looks like that right now. I could add a little bit of, if I wanted to get a darker brown, I can add the Payne's gray into it without the blue. Around some of the edges. So if it like that Payne's gray, which is kind of like black, if it's layered onto yellow and red, of course, it's going to make something that's more brownish. And it's looking kind of blackbird-like. I've been hesitant to do the eye because it's so very wet around there, but I'm going to try the eye now. So I'm going to try to leave a little ring around it. Just do this interior part and then leave a little bit of an area for a highlight. There, and then I might go back and excuse me, add a little color later. Or a little more, a few more tones later. I'm going to keep my head out of the way. So mark in the beak. There. And that's about it. So the other thing, well, this method can be applied to pretty much anything. But I wanted to, anyway, I wanted to point out the virtues. So it's like it's basically a black bird, but then you want that, you want the black to have color in it. The fact that you have taken the time to layer the primaries into this process, then you see a lot of this residual color just from that from the process. So it's black, but then you still see elements of blue. You still see some of the yellow underpainting, but it has a little bit more sparkle. And so I guess the takeaway would be that there's just